How's it going? Welcome back to another part of Tomb Raider 2 on the Mac. And yeah, in this part we're in the wreck of the Maria Doria, and yeah, I've really been anticipating this level for a while now, and I'm finally doing it. And yeah, I think this will definitely be the longest part so far, I think, because there are many sections to this level, and there's so much to cover and talk about in this part, and I guess the first thing to talk about is this part here, which I learned how to do that little fancy jump from. I've actually been watching a few of the more well-known playthroughs of this game, just to see if I could pick up a few tips, and that was actually something that really helped, because otherwise you actually end up with very little health. But yeah, you can really see the kind of, this is where the upside down effect is really kind of shown to us properly for the first time, I think, in this level. The fact that you can see where the wreck actually rested on the seabed, and I guess it's also highlighted by the fact that the level name is the wreck of the Maria Doria, which is also a very kind of definite kind of name. And even though we do get the I mean, I guess in 40 fathoms we're kind of just entering the level, and in a way it kind of acts as a kind of a transition kind of from the rig to the wreck. And I think this is the first proper level where we're really kind of thrown into the deep end, no pun intended, once again. But yeah, down here we get the very first secret, which is really well, fairly well hidden. I mean, I think when I first played this level, I don't think I had any trouble getting the secrets, but they are actually really hidden away in a really kind of cool way. And yeah, we get a lot of we do get quite a few sneaky enemies in this level once again, but honestly the enemies aren't really the thing to kind of focus your attention on in this level, I don't think, because we don't get any flamethrower guys or anything like that, and certainly nothing that is too harmful. But we get some sharks. I think they're great whites, but I'm not sure. But and then we also get these kind of sea monster creatures, almost like the monsters in Crash Bandicoot 3 on the underwater levels. But yeah, one thing I noticed from watching other people play through this game, like some of the more well-known kind of established game channels and things, so many people seem to complain about the block pulling. And honestly, that's nothing that ever bothered me. And I think what people are missing is the fact that I think people's minds are too stuck in 2017 or whenever they recorded, you know, just the 2010s in general. You know, people kind of forget that this game came out in 1997, and if anything, I really have to remind myself time and time again that this is a game from 1997, and I mean, this game really, and this series really did break boundaries for the time on the PC and on the consoles, because I mean, there were still so many bad games that came out, even towards the end, kind of at the butt end of the 90s. Like, I mean, even Elder Scrolls games were bad back then. Like, not so much like Daggerfall, but I mean, Redguard came out in '98, and that game, I mean, is kind of, I've never played it, so I can't say whether it's good or bad, but compare it to this game, and you really kind of see just how revolutionary this series is and was. And yeah, the block pulling, I think people miss the point, because core design didn't even have to include it as an option, even in the beginning. And you know, that it's not, before I even get onto the fact that you're not even just pulling around like light objects, you're literally pulling parts of the level around. So obviously it's going to, the animation will take longer. And I don't know what these people would prefer. Would you prefer it if it just was like a second long animation or something? I don't understand, you know, but the point they miss is the fact that you're able to affect the level in a really clever way. And no series comes to mind to when I think about that idea in games, but like I solely think of Tomb Raider when I think of pushing things around. And at least in the kind of PS1 era. But yeah, that was another little tip or trick that I picked up from watching people play through this level. And I can't remember the way I did it the first time. I think I actually I may have just tried to grab the ledge, but what you're supposed to do is, to make it easier for yourself, is just to tap the roll button, and then you end up just perfectly where you need to be. But yeah, this room here is just gorgeous. I love the architecture of this room, and it is yeah, it's almost like a grand hall or something like that. And I guess it would have been where the passengers would have congregated and mingled and that kind of thing. And yeah, I haven't actually spoken about my too much about my first playthrough of this level, because it was a while back. But I think the final time for me playing through this level and completing it was close to 2 hours, but it was for the most dumb reason. And it actually involves this little section here, which I can show off a little bit later, a little bit better. But so as you can see, that switch opens up these French doors, and then you can get to this switch, which is fantastic, obviously. But then to get the circuit breaker on the other side, you have to actually press the switch a second time, like that. And obviously what I did the very first time I went through, just like I'm sure a lot of people did, I didn't do it the second time, and I had to go all the way around the level. And even when I got to the other side and saw I couldn't get through, I didn't even think that I had actually triggered it myself. So yeah, that was pretty dumb on my part. But in my defense, I think one great thing about this level is the fact that it is so easy to get lost. And even as a kind of Tomb Raider kind of I wouldn't call myself an expert, but as a person who's played a lot of Tomb Raider, at least the Tomb Raider games that I enjoy, definitely, I still find it very difficult to picture in my mind this level. Like, often with video games, you can kind of picture, like, for example, the Great Wall or Venice or anything like that. You can kind of picture what you have to do first, and then the second thing, and then the third. And Obviously, it's quite easy if it's quite linear, but the great thing about this level is the fact that it's very easy to get lost, and the thing about Tomb Raider 2 is I think it's been about 2 weeks since I've actually made a Tomb Raider 2 video, so it's good to get back and make one. But I haven't actually played Tomb Raider 2 since my last video, and in between I've actually been playing a lot of Tomb Raider 3, and to most people I think that doesn't seem like a huge difference maybe to go between two games which came out a year after one another, but going back to Tomb Raider 3, which I will eventually play and cover as well, probably next year, for the 20-year anniversary. The thing I was most kind of astounded by was just how, and you know, it's right out in the open and so easy to notice, but I guess I'd never thought about it, and I know that other people have kind of talked about it as well, but Tomb Raider 2 is so linear, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, Tomb Raider 2 is what it is, and I'm definitely a believer that you have to accept things, and you know, works of art as they are, and you shouldn't try to, you know, the negatives kind of turn into the positives in a way, or you have to kind of take the good with the bad to get the whole picture, if you get what I mean. But yeah, it is very much like going from point A to point B, and then very rarely there is a point C to get to. It's just point A to point B to point A to point B, and there is a lot of switch pulling to then go and pull another switch. But once again, I think that's just a fact of the world it was born out of, the kind of 1997 kind of world where gaming wasn't very developed. I mean, in a lot of ways it was very primitive, because you had great series like Tomb Raider coming out, but then you also had so many kind of early aspects still kind of almost hanging around like a bad smell or something, and it's going to be so much fun to go back and to play Tomb Raider 3 next year and to really talk about that game in detail, because I, just like many people, will probably never decide which of the two I prefer. I really, some days, really think Tomb Raider 2 is this model of perfection almost, where it can't be beaten, but then Tomb Raider 3 almost takes that and adds upon it, but then some days I think it's almost too developed then. And but yeah, the great thing about Tomb Raider 3 is you get to go to all these natural environments like Nevada and India and stuff like that, and it doesn't feel like those worlds are even developed or designed. They just feel like, it feels almost like in real life, where you just stumble across a natural kind of outcrop, or a piece of rock or something, and it just is there because that's the way it's always been, and it doesn't feel like it's been designed. And the visuals don't give off the effect where it feels like you're supposed to sometimes even interact with certain aspects of the level, kind of, and you can kind of stand. I always remember there are certain kind of rocks in Nevada which don't look like you can actually stand on them, but then you in fact can, and it's kind of the same in all of the Tomb Raider 3 levels, kind of, and so yeah, it gives this kind of cool effect where it's like, I don't know how to best put it. It's, yeah, like, just like it wasn't even designed. It's almost like when you're out in nature or something, and you see like a rock surface and you decide to climb it or something, and you don't even think about how it got there. You just sort of accept it as it is. And I definitely get that vibe from Tomb Raider 3. And whereas Tomb Raider 2 is very much like designed and in a really cool way, but it is very much like going from point A to point B and linear and decided. And but I still praise it for that. And I think another thing which I haven't really talked about yet, which, I mean, there are certainly Tomb Raider games I've not played yet, as I've said before, and I'm sure there are Tomb Raider moments which I don't want to kind of set myself up to assume that I'm going to actually hate it, but like, I've never played Tomb Raider 4 or 5 myself. I've only watched other people play them, and yeah, certainly I can see that there are things in there I would dislike, and so it's not like I'm not like this person who just will always defend Tomb Raider, but another thing which I've noticed is people seem to there are some people who prefer other kinds of controls, and that's not really what I'm talking about, but what I'm mainly talking about is the people who really dislike the Tomb Raider controls to the point where they don't see the kind of merit of them, and they almost see the controls as a burden. And like, my reaction to that is, when I was younger, like as a young kid, I didn't really like the controls that much. Like, I did have quite a bit of... It just wasn't my preferred control system, and I always preferred... I mean, if I really think back to the controls I preferred the most, I guess I would go to something more child-friendly, like maybe platformers. I think the Vice City controls were always my favorites, but and I did have quite a bit of difficulty controlling Lara when I was younger, but it was simply because I didn't put any time or effort into kind of trying to master the controls. And what I've learned with age definitely is, you as a player, you have more control of Lara than any other control system, because everything you do, as some other people have said before, is your fault. You're in full kind of control of what happens and the outcome of what happens in the level, and the controls are so precise and so, like, you know, accurate, which annoys people, that everything is your fault, and therefore you have to you do have to put some time into mastering it, but then when you've mastered the controls, it's just so pleasing to control Lara, and you really see the benefits of such a control system. And of course, I'm not too old. I mean, this I was very young, like nowhere near old enough to play this game when it came out. I think I was only like 3, but the thing is, for some reason, I used to play a lot of games like this, and there are quite a few games from around the era that do use this system, and they're all games that I really enjoyed, like Resident Evil, for example. I really enjoyed the Resident Evil series, like I think my favorite Resident Evil game actually is Resident Evil Code Veronica X, which it would be an absolute joy to play through that game and comment on, but I actually don't own it at the minute. I used to, but yeah, like Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and even the GameCube remakes and everything, and Resident Evil 0. All of those games felt so good to control, and yeah, that was that section I was talking about earlier. But and also to add another game, I guess there was also that game Dino Crisis, which I don't know if yeah, I don't think I actually ever played that game, but I have a pretty strong memory of watching a friend play it. But it is pretty much just like, it is literally just Resident Evil without zombies and replaced with dinosaurs. But I might actually, just for fun, buy that game and just try to play through it, since I've never played it. But yeah, so I can't really think of any other games which had, but there were quite a few survival horror games which used that control system as well. And yeah, I don't know if there are any games that are out today that kind of or that have been released recently that have used that system, and it would be really interesting to see if it would work in today's world. But I guess still it's kind of only preferred by certain people, and I think that's the way it would always be. But yeah, so another thing about this level, which is I think the reason why this level is so long is the fact that it is actually split up into 3 different sections. Like, you get the Great Hall sort of sections, and then you get the and these sections, like I said, they're kind of more like the public areas where people might eat and be entertained. And then the second section, you get to go through this kind of engine area, and then towards the end of this level, we actually get to go through an area which is closer towards the cabins and the living quarters. And I think actually the next level is the living quarters, if I'm not mistaken. And so it really does, I think that's one of the main reasons why this level is so epic and long and difficult to picture in your mind exactly. But yeah, so this actually will lead down to the second area that I was talking about. And yeah, in the next level we get to I think it is the living quarters, like I said, because you get to go through kind of like where the cabin area is, and you get to also see like just like how we dropped through a swimming pool, which now that I think about it, is kind of ironic if you kind of think about it, like we're underwater and you would usually jump into or dive into a swimming pool, yet we're diving out. But yeah, we also get to see a small cinema, or like I think it is actually a cinema, but it's kind of like a stage where a show might happen. And I haven't actually gone through the next level yet, and I've really forgotten what the next level is like, because like I said so many times, it's kind of all in a blur. But there is a level, and it's the one with the cinema stage area that kind of that actually reminds me of something that might be in one of the first Resident Evil games. Actually, it's very similar to something that might be found, I guess. But another thing which I did actually go into a fair amount of depth about in the part prior to this, where I talked about the history of the Bartoli family, and I did talk a little bit about the Maria Doria, but a thing to keep in mind is the fact that the ship was sunk, I think it was in the 1960s, if I'm not mistaken. So it would have been when Bartoli was, when Marco Bartoli was a lot younger. I mean, I guess if this was 97 and then you go back 30 years to the swinging 60s, that would be, I guess that would make sense for his age. I guess it might have even been the 50s or 40s if you think about it, because he is a fairly older guy. I haven't actually looked at his actual age, but he looks like he's about 50. So yeah, it was probably closer towards the 50s or maybe even the 40s if you think about it logically. But yeah, so the ship is from an era back then in any case, and so it does bear a lot of traits from those decades, and I find that really interesting. And I guess the ship isn't actually massively deep, like I said in the last part, because 40 fathoms is not too deep, actually. And I used to be fascinated with lots of, I don't know, I just went through like this period when I was a young boy where I was really interested in shipwrecks and things like that. And I think the Titanic is way below 40 fathoms, and because I think it's so far down, it's actually at a point where the pressure is just too great for a human skull or a human body to be around, I seem to remember. And it is like you do require deep sea equipment to actually really get. I think there was a documentary about the wreck of the Titanic made around the time. I mean, I've only just really thought about it now, but this game came out in '97, and I think the Titanic film with Leo DiCaprio came out in, I think it was '97 as well. So maybe they, maybe Core Design were inspired by that, or maybe they were just, maybe it was just a coincidence, but maybe they just thought that it just needed to be a level in their game or something. But yeah, the point I was trying to make initially before I went and spoke about the Titanic was that because it's not too far down, this wreck, a lot of the ship is still intact, and it's not really too messed up if you think about it. But yeah, this is the third and final section of the level, and this part here really does remind me very much of something from a horror game, because the color use in the underwater levels in the wreck are really interesting and well. I mean, all of the levels are well put together, but I really like the use of the aquatic colors. Like there are all these kind of cyan hues that then descend into really dark blues, and it really gives off this kind of relaxing but also kind of somber tone. And whilst at the same time you kind of feel very trapped, like I've said before. And I think the first time when I used to play this level to begin with, I used to always get so terrified that I would, this was when I was a lot worse at the game, keep in mind. I used to get really kind of worried that I would get lost down here without any flares and wouldn't be able to see anything. and that kind of thing, and it really does give off that kind of effect. But yeah, this final section here really gives off the kind of go from one switch to another kind of effect. And although the outside section, which we should be going towards now, is really well put together, and I love the use of the air pockets and everything. It's just perfect. And I don't take back I guess I do take back what I said, but I think in terms of what I was saying in the parts prior to the rec levels, where I was saying I was really dreading these levels, but because I was dreading the levels, but actually going through them, I'm just enjoying it so much. Like, I could not be happier. I'm just like a child again. But and I think, I don't know which one my favorite rec level is. I mean, this is like, this has to be pretty much one of my favorite rec levels. It's so good. I don't know whether the living quarters is my favorite, but the deck is just phenomenal. It is just a work of art, and yeah, I can't wait to go through the deck, because it really has a kind of yeah, a really cathartic feeling when you finally find the Seraph, and even more so now that I know what the Seraph is. And yeah, it's going to be so cool to go through the Tibetan levels as well. And I guess the rec levels are really where the game kind of says goodbye to the lack of the supernatural in a way, because the Barkang Monastery is really where things start to become a lot more supernatural. And as I said before, towards any Tomb Raider game, towards the end of any Tomb Raider game, you really get this sense that anything is kind of possible, and there probably won't be any other time, I guess, where this game will be so relevant in a way, because it's there's something about a game being 20 years old which puts it in a very specific kind of spotlight, almost like on a very specific kind of podium, where quite a bit of time has gone in between the release of this game and everyone in the world playing it, and so much has happened since then. But yet it's also new enough to kind of see just how revolutionary this game was, and there probably won't be another time I'll really sit down and kind of have fun and really talk about this game at such great length, I guess. I don't know, never say never, but that is pretty much the reason why I wanted to kind of make a 20-year anniversary of this commentary of this game. And yeah, I was trying to line up to find these dudes down here, but not that it really matters, because we have so much health. It is just not even an issue at this point. But yeah, I really just adore this room here. It's just the use of the blues in this room really gives off the kind of aquatic vibe I was talking about, and the mixture of the kind of deep oranges with the deep blues really kind of is very striking. And yeah, you can probably see what I meant about the fact that there are just a lot of kind of easy henchmen to kill in this level. And in terms of enemies, it is a fairly easy level, and I think that's all I needed from in this room. But I did also forget to mention the fact that I just picked up the by gaining all 3 secrets, I actually got the grenade launcher again, and instead of doing what I did in Venice, which was a lot of fun, where I just used it throughout the level because there was no point reserving ammunition, I think at this point in the game I probably will try to save it for that Yeti boss, or maybe even the dragon. I think I might wait for the dragon, but I'll see where I find the most use, to put it like that. But yeah, we're finally nearing the end of this level, and yeah, though I think that's the first time we see those sea creatures. They kind of look similar to the Barracuda, but I seem to remember you also get these other kind of sea, kind of like sleeve monsters as well, but maybe that's just me remembering Crash Bandicoot instead. But yeah, weirdly enough, that is the end of the level, and yeah, that was Wreck of the Maria Doria. And in 38 minutes, that was definitely the longest part so far, but I really thoroughly enjoyed that. And yeah, thanks for watching this very long beast of a part, and yeah, until next time, goodbye.